Is it on? I can never hear it like through your system. All right. So I just want to give you a little background. Like some of you have asked me a little bit about why I do this or how am I qualified to do this. So, and I've told some of you, I grew up in northern Michigan. My grandpa was a trapper and a hunter. My grandma was always in the woods doing wild edible plants and stuff. So I grew up in the woods doing these kind of things. I took a survival class in college. I have taken people winter camping, large groups, 20 or 30 people, building shelters. I've taught survival classes since, before I can remember, I think. I've been teaching people survival classes and going out into the wild. Jesus said, pray that your flight would not be on the Sabbath or in the winter. What does that mean? What is implied in that? Pray that your flight will not be on the Sabbath or in the winter. Are you going to have a flight? You're right. Implied in that verse is you are going to have to run to somewhere else. You're going to have to leave your home. You're going to have to flee. He said you're going to have to flee. Pray that it's not on the Sabbath day or in the winter, which is just practical, right? It would be much easier to flee into the wilderness in the summertime than it would be in the wintertime for most people. I mean, wild edible plants are certainly far more scarce in the wintertime than in the summertime. You do realize, though, that there have been people in history. Have you ever heard of the Donner Party in our American history? They were a group of pioneers going out west, and they got out into Nevada at Donner Pass, and they were caught in the snow, and they were stuck there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they had no food, and so people starved to death. And some of the people, when they died, some of the Donner Party ate the people that died. So they were cannibals. The people that ate the people, the cannibal people, they all died. And the people that only ate the inner barks of the trees lived. You can look it up and read the history of it. So you can live on the inner bark of most trees. So do you know what the inner bark of a tree is? You have the wood and you have the bark, and there's a little thin film between the bark and the wood, and that's what you can eat. And if you happen to have, there's not that many birch trees here in Missouri that where I'm from, there's paper birch, white birch trees. If you boil the inner bark of a birch tree, it turns bright pink. And it's really good, loaded with vitamins and nutrition, the inner bark of a tree. Slippery elm? Okay. So, yes?
Palm tree or coconut trees, like in the Philippines, many that we can eat.
The inner...
Open it up, and that's a lot of food in there.
Yeah.
You know.
So it depends on where you are, but I'm just telling you that some knowledge, even in a very horrible situation, those people just lived on the bark of a tree through the winter time. Yes?
Are you talking about the sapwood?
No, the lining.
Just the line?
Yep. The lining between the outer bark and the wood. There's a little thin, it's paper thin, you have to peel it off, but some people strip it into strips and cook it like spaghetti and eat it, and they call it spaghetti, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't taste anything like spaghetti. There are 7 priorities to survival. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. Like, I believe Matthew 24. I believe that we're going to be in a situation. That's why I do what I do. And I have some experience. I don't profess to know everything. I'm still a learner myself. So I'm just sharing with you what I have learned so far and what I know. There are 7 priorities to survival. The first one is have faith in God, have a positive attitude. So it's really important in any situation that you stay calm and you think, that like stop and think and assess the situation. And panic is an enemy. We talked a little bit about that. The 7 enemies of survival are panic, boredom, cold or heat, fatigue, injury and pain, thirst and hunger. And not necessarily in that order. So, people that go to the Grand Canyon, the number one reason why people die at the Grand Canyon? Nope. You would think that would be it. It's people go to the edge and they say, help me for a second. They say, oh, I want to take your picture. Back up just a little. Back up just a little. Number one reason why people die at the Grand Canyon. And so it's not being aware of what's going on, right? Not being aware of what's happening. And so we need to be aware, assess the situation that we're in, and think about what's happening. Again, if you have knowledge, in the case of survival, knowledge really is power. Because knowledge can save your life. A little knowledge, like the Donner Party and the bark tree, the bark of the tree. That little bit of knowledge saved their lives. So we don't want to be stupid, but we do want to be prepared. And like Jeff said, we are not talking about doing any of this apart from God. We're doing this with God and because God told us to. And we do need to have faith. We are not going to make it out of this world without faith in God. And God is going to help us, and He's going to, the things that we put in our mind, the things that we study, God promised the Holy Spirit would bring those things back to us at the moment that we need them, right? So that's an important thing to have in mind. We need some knowledge of first aid. So basic things that you need. You need food, shelter, water, first aid, right? Those are basic things. Which one is most important? It totally depends on the situation, right? So if you have a gashing wound and you're bleeding to death, is water more important than first aid? In that instance, first aid is more important. If you have somebody that's having a low blood sugar attack, what's more important, shelter or food? Food. I took a group of like 20 ladies on a backpacking trip, and we put our packs down. We were on the shores of Lake Michigan. We put our packs down, and we were just going to go a little ways. Well, you know how that works. A little ways turned into more little ways. Pretty soon we were like a mile or so from our packs. And one of the ladies had a low blood sugar attack. I mean, her eyes were rolling, and she was, it was critical. Thankfully, I had my jackknife in my pocket, and I went around, gathered some stuff, put it in my hand, squished it up, and said, eat this. She ate it, and it took her out of the situation. So at that moment in time, food was more important than anything else. So you always have to assess your situation and think, at this moment, what do I need? If we were stuck outside right now, what would be number one priority? Shelter and warmth. So we're going to talk about all of these things. So you should have some knowledge of first aid. I would say that all of our churches should have somebody come in and teach a first aid class. Certainly we have enough medical professionals in our churches that you could have one of your doctors or nurses come and do a first aid class, basic wound care. When it comes to first aid, don't rule out one of the most important first aid tools, duct tape. I'm the duct tape queen. Duct tape will help prevent blisters. You can do splinting. You can put it on open wounds. It's a wonderful thing to have in your kit. Charcoal is good for some things, diarrhea and stuff. Of course, you can make charcoal. Yep, you can make charcoal too. So you should just have some basic, I'm not teaching a first aid class here, but I want to tell you, get some knowledge of first aid. Get a book, get a Kindle book on your Kindle or your iPad, and just spend a little extra time reading about first aid stuff. You also need shelter. So there's different scenarios that could happen. Right now, I assume you live in a house or an apartment, so you have shelter. It could be that the scenario is you have to shelter at home. As long as you have power and water, not a problem. The moment you have no power and no water, that becomes a problem. So then you need to know what to do. What water sources do you have at your home if you had no power and your pump didn't work, or there was no city water? How much water do you have at your home? How much water do you need? So you need about a gallon of water per person per day. Right? So how much water do you have at home? If you went home right now, there was a major crisis, how much water do you have? Do you have enough? Do you have enough for 1 gallon per person per day? For how many days? You can only go 3 days without water before you start going loony. Right? Your brain starts being affected without water. Do you know that you have probably 10 gallons of water in your hot water heater that you could use in an emergency? If you don't put junk in the back of your toilet, you have a few gallons of fresh water in the back of your toilet that you could drink. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yes?
Some of us here live out, so we have wells. I got what they call a bullet. You take the bullet out, you can drop that bullet in there and bring water up.
Yeah, if you have a well, that's awesome, because then you have your own water. I mean, some of us live in the city and we don't have that option, so yes.
Your fish aquariums are another option, because when I didn't have any water, I drank out of an aquarium. And, the glass of it, the fish keep the water conditioned, so it doesn't taste fishy or anything. It tastes purified water.
So the best thing would be is to have some water stored at your house. You can get these big water containers. Why not get a couple of those and store, at least a week's worth of water at your house per person? So you can get them, they're 7-gallon containers. And, if you have 3 people, get 3 of them. They're not very expensive. For the price of going out to dinner, you could store some water. Instead of buying a container, the next time you buy a 2-liter of pop or a container of juice, wash it out really good with bleach water, let it dry, air dry, fill it with water, put a couple drops of bleach in it, put the lid on it, and put it away, and you have a liter or a gallon of water, which costs you nothing extra. And store some water up. That also works. Some peroxide in the water. There's various ways of purifying water. Water is important. You can buy water in these little pouches. They come, if you bought a ready-made emergency kit, it would have these pouches of water in it. It's kind of heavy, but water is heavy. When I did a backpacking trip in Death Valley, there were 3 of us, and we had to carry 60 pounds of water because there is no water in Death Valley. Even the animals there are dying of hunger because I dropped my flip-flop, and by the time I realized it, I was like a half a mile down the path, down the canyon. So I turned around, go back up the canyon. When I got up there, a rat was eating my flip-flop. It has little rat bites all over it. I love it. It's like a treasure now. But even they're like starving, Just because I had sweat on my flip-flop, he was starving for that salty sweat. So it's important to have water. You can get, this is a water bottle that I use for backpacking. So when it's empty, it weighs nothing. So if you think about sheltering at home, you can store gallons of water, hundreds of pounds of water, not a problem. But if you had to leave your home and flee, you can't carry hundreds of pounds of water, right? And I know people that have like tons of gear in their Jeep Cherokee. So in a major crisis, how far can you drive a Jeep Cherokee before you run out of gas? And then what are you going to do with tons of gear? See, that's a problem. So the more mobile you make yourself, have all the stuff to shelter at home, but then make sure that you're mobile enough so that you could grab it and go. Right? Isn't that pretty much what Matthew 24 says? Be ready, but also be mobile. Yes? They're awesome. So there's several options today. You can get a life straw. They cost like $19, and you just put it in the water and drink it right out of the straw. I have like 6 or 7 of those, but I could not find one to bring with me today. So my problem is I go do so many of these seminars, I go home, I try to get my stuff all ready, back where it belongs. But then if I have another seminar in the next week, then like I have another one of these in 2 weeks. So I don't, like for these seminars, I try to put everything together, but at home I don't have it. I have it lightweight, my favorite things in a bag so I can grab it and go. So somehow my life straw got displaced. This is called a Sawyer filtration, and you scoop the dirty water up in this bag, screw this onto it, and then just squeeze the water through here, squeeze it out, and it comes out clean. It filters through this. That's an option. This will do like 10,000 liters of water, so it's pretty good. The Sawyer water filter. Sawyer. 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 This is what the military uses. It's called the SteriPen. So it kills germs with light, and you push the button. You get your water, you push the button, and you stir it in the water, and the light kills all the contamination. You should consider no water safe to drink. Like if you get it out of the ground, unless it's a deep well, you should not, like if you just go get a mud puddle or something, or the river or a pond, no water is safe to drink today. You should filter it in some form. Yes?
Whatever battery or power source it has, how long does that last under the tank?
With one battery, this uses like the C123 battery, the little short fat batteries. This would do enough water for 4 people for about 5 days. So you should have extra batteries if you're going to rely on this one. Not that long. In fact, we had 5 people on a backpacking trip, and this failed. This totally failed. So there's one saying in survival that 1 is none. So if you only have one way of doing something and that thing fails, you're dead, right? So you should always have more than one way of doing something. So when I go into the wilderness, I take this, and I take water tablets. And these tablets are nice. They're called Aquamira. They don't taste like anything. The water tastes perfect. No iodine or none of that nasty stuff that they used to put in tablets. You drop this in a liter of water, and in 4 hours, it's good to drink. So I have drank a lot of water this way. And then there's regular like water purifiers that you pump water through. This is a water purifier, and you put a hose into the dirty water. This one, put a hose into the dirty water, and then a hose coming out to your water bottle, and you pump it, and it's good for your muscles. And you pump it, and you pump the dirty water through. And I have been in situations before where we couldn't find any water except a little tiny shallow mud puddle. And we put this in the mud puddle, and we filtered the mud puddle water, and it was, it was great. If you're thirsty, even a mud puddle tastes good.
What was the brand name of that one?
This is called Pure. There's several different brands. If you go to like a sporting goods store, they'll have several brands. Yeah. So this one's nice because it filters out viruses and bacteria. So in a situation like a catastrophic event, major flooding or whatever, I would want a virus purification too. You can also boil water, bring water to a boil. But remember, if you're in a situation and you are low on fuel, if you don't have to waste your fuel energy boiling water to purify it, then all the better. You can use your fuel to do your food. Does that make sense? So when it comes to water, how many ways do you need to purify water? Yeah, at least 2 ways. And you can get these tablets at, like, if you have a backpacking store in town, or Dick's or something like that probably has it. Sports Authority maybe would have it. Maybe they cost $6. And you can do, I forget how many liters of water. Stick this in your bag. I mean, for what? The price of one Subway sandwich. You could have several liters of water available.
Academy has things like that. I got a deal at home. When I got out of the military in 72, 11,000 feet in Colorado, you can drink water. They don't recommend it anymore because all the hikers go up there during the off season.
Right.
And that's taboo. You don't drink the water without purifying it. So I got a little thing you run, it's filtered, and run water through it and drink it. Academy has those.
Yeah. Really consider no water safe. That's the safest thing that you can do. What you can get from drinking contaminated water is extreme diarrhea and vomiting from the bugs. And if you're in a situation where you're already in a crisis, that's the last thing in the world that you want to get. It's not worth the risk. So I have been in all kinds of wilderness situations, from the deepest snow and minus 20 degrees to the hottest heat in Death Valley, and I've never gotten the bug yet from water. So you just have to be smart about it and make sure that you're not drinking the water. Any questions about water? I mean, look, it's taken me years to collect all of this gear, and I'm not suggesting that you go out tomorrow morning and spend $1,000. What I am suggesting is that you go home and you take assessment of what you have at home, and you put it together in a bag. And the bag should be something that's easy to carry. This is a backpack, and if you had to flee, I would not want to, carry grocery bags with plastic handles. So if you don't have a backpack and you want to get a backpack, just give you a couple of tips. It's very easy to carry a lot of weight with a backpack, because the hip belt is what is the key. So when you put this hip belt around your waist and you tighten it up and you have weight in your pack, all the weight that's in your pack is forced down onto your hips, which is on your bones. So if it's on your bones, you can hold it up. That's why we're made the way we are. And your bones are bearing the weight, and your muscles won't get so sore because your bones are bearing the weight. So I've carried in this pack right here on backpack trips before more than half of my body weight. I've carried 65 pounds in this pack for miles and miles and miles. And I can do it because of the hip belt. So if you're thinking about buying a pack for your gear, which I think you should do, is buy, you can get a pack for $20, or you can spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Make sure the one that you get has a hip belt on it. Just to prove the point, I went to Walmart before, and I took $50. And I told myself, I'm going to see if I can buy everything I need for a survival kit for $50 at Walmart. And I did. I bought everything I need. I bought a backpack with a hip belt. I bought water purification. I bought shelter, everything for under $50. Now, is it the best gear in the world? No. But would it do in an emergency? Yes, it would. So it's actually doable and affordable. So the next time you go to the store, pick up a little something. Every time you go to the store, pick up a little something and put it all in one place in your house, so that if that prophetic clock strikes, or if there's a physical disaster in your area, a natural disaster, you could be the one that could run into your house, grab that bag, and out you go, right? Because you have everything in there that you need. So water is one of the most important things. Food is the least important. Okay? So unless you have like diabetic issues. So shelter is very important. I have myself boxed in. So you need some kind of shelter. This is a tent. For shelter, you can use a trash bag. You know, you can make a tube tent out of a trash bag. The main thing is you want shelter between your body and cold and between your body and the earth. Mother Earth is not your friend. If you just went outside right now and laid down on the ground, the earth would suck the heat out of your body and you would freeze to death. So you always need something between your body and the ground. So I use what's this pad. It's a closed cell foam pad inside, and it allows air over the closed cell. So it's very warm. This is called a thermarest. I could sleep on a gravel pit and be comfortable with this. It's only 1 inch thick, but it's a closed cell foam pad with air. So you need something. If you have nothing between your body and the ground, then find natural material. Cut down bushes, put pine branches underneath you, leaves, anything. Make it a foot thick if it's natural material between yourself and the ground. So that's really important to remember. It's good to have in your kit when you think about warmth, a space blanket. Now these come in a little pack. Here's a space blanket in here in this little pack. This is just a little cheap survival kit. It has a whistle, a light stick, a little compass, and a space blanket. That's it. But you can buy this for like maybe $1.99, sometimes $1 at Walmart. Will keep out all moisture. It will keep out all moisture. It radiates the sun's heat to keep you warm, generating heat. It's reflective. You could use it as an emergency reflector. You can lay it down, and the sun shining on that will melt snow, so you could get water. And just to test this out, I took it out in northern Michigan when it was 20 degrees outside and several feet of snow, and I just wrapped up in this. I just had a t-shirt on and some fleece sweatpants and wool socks, and I slept outside at 20 degrees in this with something between me and the ground. And I slept all night, woke up in the morning, and I didn't die. Still here. The only thing is, because it doesn't let any moisture in, it doesn't let any moisture out. So I duct taped this into a sleeping bag, and then I crawled inside of it and snuggled all up in it. So when I woke up in the morning, guess what I was? Soaking wet. Like soaking wet, because all of my evaporative heat loss turned into moisture inside of this. But I was warm and wet until I stepped out of it, and then I was cold. Yes?
I had a friend of mine, he said you put leaves in, if there are leaves available, use leaves, and you will not cut the moisture.
Yeah. So you can also use leaves as insulator between yourself and the ground. But if you ever find yourself in a situation, just make sure Mother Earth is not your friend. Just lock that away in your head. It will suck the life out of you. You can also have a trash bag. And remember I said you always have more than you think you have? So whatever you have to think multi-purpose. Like a trash bag. What could you use a trash bag for? Let's think outside of the box. A what? Okay, it could be a poncho. Cut a hole here, put it over your head. What else? I have led a whole troop of trash bag urchins through a rainy day with a hole in their head here like this. What else could it be? Okay, a raincoat. It will add warmth because it will break the wind from getting to your body. It can be a tent. You cut the end off of it with your knife. and you have a tube tent for a midget. If you duct tape two of them together, you'd have a tube tent for a normal sized person. I can fit into one of these, but I am like pretty much almost a midget. Not quite, but almost. What else could it be? It can catch rain so you can get water. You can open it up and put it around a branch on a tree, and the leaves of the tree will sweat, and you can catch that water in the bag and drink it. That's what they do in the desert if you need water. What else? Okay, it could be used for storage. You could cut it into strips. It could become a trinket if somebody's bleeding to death, right? It could be a rope, a wrap. You have to think outside of the box. Everything that you put in your pack, you want to think of multiple uses for it. So even something simple like a bandana, what could a bandana be? And I recommend that you put a bandana in your pack. So here's a bandana, well used for a multitude of things. Okay, it can be a tourniquet, it can be a sling, it can be a bandage, it can be a Kotex. What? Could be a flag, a signal. I was backpacking in Utah, in the canyons there in Utah, and we went for a hike, and I didn't want to get lost because it's very easy to get lost in the canyons. So I tied my bandana on the top of a bush, and we went on a hike, and when we tried to come back, we couldn't find our campsite. And so finally we saw the orange flag. So it can be a flag. What else? What if you have dirty water? So now it becomes a water filter. It's a sweatband. Put it around your neck. It's cotton. You sweat. The sweat in the cotton takes the heat off your body. That's another important thing is, especially in this climate, cotton is a killer. Okay, sunburn protection, do-rag for motorcycle people. It can be a lot of different things. So, again, multi-purpose. Cotton kills. You should have the right kind of clothes in your bag. Think about it, ladies. How many of you would want to flee with the shoes you have on right now? No, it would be suicide, right? It would be horrible. Do you know that you can die from blisters on your feet? The blisters can get infected, and that infection can turn into gangrene, and you can die. So it's, quickly, something simple like a blister can turn into a major issue. So you need some kind of other clothes besides cotton. So in your bag, yeah, you need a mule. In your bag, you need some wool socks. Okay, you can buy wool socks anywhere. Get some wool socks. Cotton socks, you'll freeze to death. If I did an experiment today, and I had some of you put on white athletic cotton socks and a pair of good wool socks and sent you outside, and you had one sock on each foot, which foot do you think would freeze first? The cotton sock would freeze first. So get some good wool socks. I'll put this stuff up, and after I'm done yapping, you can look at it. You should have some kind of wind pants or rain pants. You can get these at Walmart. Just a simple pair of nylon pants that cut the wind from going through your skin to your skin. Some kind of long underwear. Wool, not cotton. Those old cotton, bumpy, long underwear, no, 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 in a survival situation. Right, layering is important. So you need a raincoat. If you look at this one, you'll see it's all worn out at the top because it's had multiple years of abuse. But you need some kind of raincoat. So you need to be warm. You need a sleeping bag in your kit. If you had to flee, just think if all the people in Joplin would have had a kit with a tent and a sleeping bag, when that tornado went through and they were homeless, instantly everyone would have had shelter and warmth. Well, they could clear a spot. So you should have something in mind. Even a wool blanket and a space blanket can make a sleeping bag. Okay, so you can go as high tech as you want or as low tech as you want. But you need to have something for warmth. Another thing that you need to know how to do is make a fire. So again, if you're sheltering at home, not a problem, right? But if you have to leave your home, then you need some of these skills. So you need to know how to make a fire. Of course, the easiest thing for a fire is a lighter, right? Click, and you have a fire. That's the easy. My lighter is in my purse. In my purse, I carry a lighter, I carry a knife, I carry some rope, I carry a tool, like a pry tool. I work on the second floor of a corporate business. And do you know that at 9/11, there was a group of people that were stranded in the Twin Tower, and one person had a little tool that was like a little pry bar. It's called like a mini pry bar. And they were able to open an elevator door, and that one person's tool helped like 7 people escape. And they wouldn't have escaped if he didn't have that one little tool. So I carry one of those little mini pry bars in my purse in case I'm stranded and I need to open a door. So it's good to have a few things on your person. So in your pocket, guys, you can carry a knife. A lot of women's clothes today don't have pockets. So we carry purses, so put a knife in your purse, a lighter. Even if you don't smoke, having a lighter in there is a good idea. So have a little multi-tool, maybe. I couldn't tell you how many times I've pulled out my little knife out of my purse, and it has a jackknife on it, and scissors and whatever, and, dealt with something that some issue somebody was having, and I was able to fix the issue with my little tool. So it's nice to have. You should have some kind of a flint to start a fire. You could start like thousands of fires with this. So it's a magnesium stick with a little flint. And I have one of these that I had since probably I was maybe 15 years old. And it's only half used up as much as I use it, and I probably use it more than any of you. And it's only half used up. So I could start thousands of fires with this. I hardly ever use the magnesium. The theory behind this is you take the little saw blade and you scrape off pieces of magnesium. It comes off like little shavings, and the magnesium ignites with a spark. Then you get your little pile of magnesium, then you take your knife and you spark this, and the spark hits the magnesium and starts a fire. Well, if you would practice, you wouldn't even need the magnesium. You could just start the fire with the spark. But you're not going to be able to instantly do that. You need to practice doing that. You need to practice how to start a fire. And that is something that we don't know so much how to use and how to do. This is the knife I use. It has a flint built right into it. And it's stuck. For some reason. We're going to die. So it's a flint built right into the knife, so you just take the back of your knife and you can shoot a spark and start a fire. I did that at one church, and it was a big spark, and it went down and it like burned a little hole. So I just moved up one step. That's why I didn't do it very hard here. But it's good to have a good knife in your pack, not some flimsy knife, but a good solid knife that's a solid blade all the way through. Because if you have a blade that bends, if you're in a survival situation, you have to do a lot of things with your knife. It's very easy to have that knife bend onto your finger. And the one thing that you don't need in a survival situation is a needless wound, right? So get a good solid knife. Of all the tools that I would ever want in a survival situation, my first tool that I would want would be a good knife. So, if you're going to fork out a little extra money for something, get a good knife first. So, yes, Leatherman's nice. In your kit, you should have a portable radio, emergency radio, so that you can crank it up even if you don't have power or batteries. You can crank it up and then turn it on and then listen to the weather. I was doing a class like this in a city in the summertime, and I cranked it up and I turned it on. And when I turned it on, it said, "This is the weather. This is an emergency broadcast. There's a tornado headed toward that town that I was in." Everybody's eyes like, "Oh, that's so funny." I'm like, "No, this is for real." It's a real radio. So it's good to have something like this because you know when you're in a situation and you're hunkering down and you don't know what's going on, it's more stressful to not know what's happening. So if you can tune into the news and find out maybe what's happening around you, it's a good thing to have in your kit. There's something called wet fire. It's a little block. It looks like this. And if you scrape this off into a little pile and start a spark, it will burn a long time, and it's really hot. And it will burn in water. It's called wet fire. So that's why it's called wet fire, because it will burn even when it's wet. And so you can start a fire. My favorite thing to have in my kit is some cotton balls. And you take a cotton ball. I'll just show you how this works. You can buy a whole bag of cotton balls for $1. Okay? So you buy a bag of cotton balls, and you get some Vaseline, which probably you already have at your house. And you open up the cotton ball, so it's kind of like in half. So you have like a little basket there. And you take just a little bit of Vaseline on your finger, not too much, put it inside, wipe it off with your finger. Now you have a little cotton ball with Vaseline inside. Now if I put this on the floor and I took my knife and I put one spark into this, this will burn for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And you put all your kindling on it, and it's a perfect fire starter. I had a group of people in Colorado, and we were snowshoeing in the wintertime. We stopped for lunch, and they said, "Let's build a fire." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, we better go out and find wood and stuff." So while they were all out getting wood, I took my cotton ball out of my pocket and my knife out of my pocket, sparked it, put some little branches on it. They all come back with, dragging a bunch of wood. I already had a little fire started right there. It's so quick and easy. So it's nice to have, and just put it in a Ziploc bag, and how many fires could you start? Just have it right there. Easy peasy. And probably you already have that stuff at home, so not a big deal. You can also get these kind of like fire sticks. And if you start this, it's the same thing, we have those logs we put in our fireplaces, and you light it. It's a bunch of sawdust with whatever in it. And you can have this and light it, and it'll burn for a long time, and you can add sticks to it and make a fire. For me, a fire is very comforting if you're out in the wild. One time I did a survival week by myself, and it was right after I became a Christian, and I just went out into the wilderness, and I took a knife and some matches and some salt. I built my own shelter. I scrounged for food where I could get it, and I had a fire all day and during the night. And there's just something so comforting. Besides the warmth from the fire, it kind of makes you feel like safe and at home if you have a fire. So knowing how to have a fire is something that's really important to learn how to do. You can just go in your backyard and with a few little twigs practice starting a fire. And just practice till you get so that you can do it. I go outside of my back door. I live in a big neighborhood in Kansas City. Houses all lined up next door. So I go in my backyard and I practice fire skills. And I practice doing stuff, because if you don't use it, you do lose it, right? And I don't want to lose what I do know already. And I want to keep learning new ways. So practice starting a fire. It's great. When I was on that wilderness survival thing, after I just became a Christian, my mother thought I was totally crazy. And it was in the early spring, so there was still snow on the ground and everything. And I had my shelter built and everything. And my mom was really worried about me because, of course, we didn't have cell phones and stuff. So my mom I told my mom where I was going, so she hiked all the way back to where I was on this bend in a river. She came back there to see how I was doing, and she said, Angie, I'm so worried about you. Are you starving to death? I'm like, no, look, Mom, I got this, and I got this, and, I had a little soup brewing there and stuff out of greens and stuff. There's nothing that tastes really good in the wild, just so you know. It's nutritious, but it doesn't really taste good. So my mom said, I brought you something special. And she said it was in the car. I wasn't sure, if you'd even want it. So walk me back to the car and you can get it. So what she brought me was 2 raw eggs. I'm like, oh, Mom, thanks. That's great, So she gave them to me, and I put them. I had a vest on, a down vest, and I put 1 egg in each pocket. And I was walking back to my camp. I was going over a log, and I stubbed my toe, and I fell like smack right on the log, and I heard. Yeah, so disappointed because after so many days of just eating, wild food, I was really looking forward to those eggs, but it didn't happen. Then when I told her, she laughed and laughed. So we've covered water, we've covered fire, we've covered shelter, we've covered food. It would be a good idea to put a long-burning candle in your kit so that you have light, and a candle lit in a car will keep you warm. Okay? If you get caught in a blizzard and you're stuck in your car, lighting 1 candle in your car will keep you from freezing to death. And I have had family members, being from Michigan, that had to do that, and the candle kept them. So growing up the way I grew up, everybody keeps a candle in their car, matches, jar of peanut butter, and crackers. Blankets and a shovel. Standard in the car. So it's a good thing to have. Plus, you can take 1 match, light the candle, and use the candle to start your fire, right? And the candle will burn and burn and burn instead of whipping out 5, 10, 15 matches, and pretty soon you're going to run out of matches. So if you do have matches, like how many fires could you start with 1 match? So here's some matches. These are wooden matches. How many fires? How many think 1 fire? You're all not going to do it now, right? So how many think 2 fires? Well, if it's a good match, how many think 2 fires? Okay, but once you strike the match, it's used, right? No, but I'm talking about really starting a fire. So if you have a good sharp knife, and you're going to have to practice this, you can split the match into 4 pieces, and you can start 4 fires with 1 match. You can do it. I've done it. But you have to practice, because if you don't do it right, the head will break off, and then, yeah. So I know it's possible. I have done it. 2 is better, but if you were really short on matches, you could split 1 match into 4 pieces and start 4 fires. Maybe. Maybe not. It can be done.
I do, but it's like what I'm saying is, how many people here, to save their life, maybe 2 or 3 or 4? We'd be getting sold.
So now I want to talk about food a little bit. As far as priorities of survival, we often think of food as our first priority, but most of the time food is the last priority. Shelter is usually the first priority. Get out of the elements. Make sure you're warm and dry. Get water, right? Take care of any first aid needs. And then food is your last priority. So if you're in a situation, don't think, this is the last Snicker bars I have. Think of getting shelter, getting out of the elements. This morning it was 12 degrees, right? So if right now we were all outside, we would want to make sure we had a shelter. When you think about building a shelter, if you don't have a shelter, here's what I observed in multitude of taking people out and having them build shelters. People generally build shelters like they're building a house. And when the rule for shelters, the smaller the shelter, the better. If you build a tall, high shelter, I had a couple of guys build a shelter. It was like 13 feet high, and it was like 10 feet around. It was this huge monster thing. They were so proud of it, and it was cold. It was wintertime. I said, dudes, you're going to freeze to death in that shelter, because by the time your body heats up even a little layer of air, it's all going to evaporate out the top. So the smaller the shelter, the better. I took my husband and another couple that had never done it out before. We went winter camping and we built snow shelters. And the snow shelter was only big enough for us to fit into, not any bigger than that, so that your body heat can heat up the air inside of that shelter. So measure your body on the ground and make your shelter about that big. So the problem that we had that one time was I measured my body, and so my husband was really cramped in there, and I slept by the door, and he slept on the inside, and I have drug him on a lot of adventures he probably wouldn't have gone on. But at like 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, and I looked over, and he was staring right at me with great big eyes. He goes, "Can we get out of here now?" Because he was so like totally surrounded by snow. So remember, smaller is better if you're ever in a situation where you have to shelter away from your home. Food is something important. And of course, if you shelter at home, you should have enough food at your house for a few months, really. There are a lot of, the more country the people, the more food they tend to have in their home. The more city the people, the less food they have in their home. So metro people mostly have enough food for today or maybe tomorrow. And they're more used to going to market every day and getting food. Country people, a lot of us, we freeze, Country people do that kind of stuff. City people don't. So I would assume that most people in Joplin have some food at their homes. But you need to just do an assessment. How much food do you have at your home? How long could you sustain life? And don't just think about yourself. Because remember, we're doing Christian readiness. So if you had 10 more people come to your house, now how much food do you have? Right? If 10 other people from the church, they lost their home, and they come to your house, how much do you have now? See, I believe as Christians we should plan not just for ourselves, but plan to help others. So that means there's 2 of us at home right now at my household, my husband and me. I can't just plan for my husband and me. You know what I have people tell me? Angie, when stuff happens, we're coming to your house. We're not going to do any preps. We're coming to your house. Well, that's going to put a strain on me if I've only planned for 2 people, right? And I'm not saying I'm planning for 100 people either, because that's not fair either. But we do need to plan for more than just ourselves, so that maybe we could help somebody. And maybe in helping them in a disaster, we can teach them about Jesus and they'll fall in love with Jesus. So we can use situations to help people learn about God if we're ready and we're prepared for it. So have the simplest thing, have some canned food at home and a can opener. Really, right? Have the simplest thing. Open a can of beans, eat them. Boom, done. In fact, when we were driving across the country, I was taking my daughter to California. We took a can of beans and a can opener, and we stopped on the Oregon Trail, got out of our car, went and sat in the dirt, opened the can of beans, and pretended like we were on the Oregon Trail and ate the beans. I mean, think about it. People in our American history lived on beans. That was their food. They lived on beans. They ate the broth in the morning, and they ate the broth at lunch, and they ate the beans for supper. And the next day, they ate them again. So, cans of food. Have some cans of food at your house. as far as carrying food, if you have to flee your home, I don't want to carry cans of food. Okay, so when you go to the grocery store, there's all kinds of food that you can buy at the grocery store, like ready-made soups and stuff that you can buy that are dried and complete. And all you have to do is boil some water and put this in it, and in 5 minutes, your food's ready to go. Well, you can just get like these ready-made soups at the Walmart, Hy-Vee, Price Chopper. You can just get these foods at the grocery store. When you're at the grocery store, look at some of those foods that come all dried and throw a couple packs in every time you go to the store, and then you have some if you need them. MREs are nice. MREs are meals ready to eat. They're military food. All you do is open the pouch and eat it. And I've eaten a lot of these. Most of them are pretty good. And you can get stuff like chili and lasagna and ratatouille and refried beans and whatever. But they're heavy. The moisture is in the food, so it's heavy. You can come up and lift one of these packs, or you can lift this. So if I had to carry one or the other, I would want to carry this, but I want some of these in my pack to eat early on. If I don't, if I'm fleeing, I can just grab this and eat it on the way. Yes?
Well, I love the last time I heard you speak, and I asked you about food, and you said, wait, we'll get to it. And you talked about how hard it would be for us, especially us Adventists, when we think about beans and rice and stuff, and you mentioned how hard it would be to carry 25 pounds of rice.
Right.
Or 50 pounds of beans, and then how much water it would really take to try to cook all that when we're in a survival situation anyways. And I recognize the importance of these kinds of foods.
And that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people are thinking about preparing for, disasters and emergencies. And you can go to Sam's or Costco, and you can buy like 25 pounds of rice and 25 pounds of beans or 25 pounds of wheat. But you cannot eat that food in its state like it is. And it takes how long to cook beans? How much fuel? If you have limited fuel, and I have stoves over there to talk about still. If you have limited fuel, you could use up almost all your fuel cooking beans for an hour. That is not the best food to have for fleeing. It's fine to have for sheltering at home. That's right. So if you're sheltering at home, yes, I have pounds of rice and I have pounds of beans, and it's cheap, good food to have on hand. So I do have that. But that's not the food that I'm going to take. So what I do with my rice and my beans is I soak the beans, I cook the rice, I cook the beans, then I dehydrate it. Now I have dehydrated, cooked beans and rice. All you have to do is pour boiling water in a Ziploc bag on the beans and rice, and in 5 minutes, ready to go. When I backpack, that's all I do. Boil water, put it into a Ziploc bag with my food. That is how we cook. It's called freezer bag cooking. There's books on it. And it's great because you have no dishes. You just pour the boiling water in the Ziploc bag, good to go. So you can buy pre-cooked rice, quick rice. You can buy bean flakes. You can buy, 40 pounds of bean flakes in a big container. All you do is pour boiling water on them. Oatmeal doesn't take much cooking, but it's heavy. So it's good to have oatmeal. Well, you put it in a bag with all the rest of your stuff and see how heavy it is. It's kind of heavy. Yeah, if you have a mule, you're set.
How are you storing your dried food at the house that you're keeping on hand?
So it's good to have your dried food in Mylar bags that don't allow moisture. Put oxygen absorbers in there and put it in food buckets, which you can get. I had 100 of these magazines. I do not work for this company, but I like their stuff and it's really cheap. So it's called, you can go to their website, beprepared.com, and you can buy in bulk dried and freeze-dried food. And if it comes all sealed in Mylar bags in food-grade buckets with oxygen absorbers, it'll last like 20 years. So my husband and I, we tend to just kind of eat this way all the time. So if I buy 50 pounds of beans, we just eat those beans, and I have beans for an emergency. We buy oatmeal this way, we buy rice this way, we buy wheat this way, and then we just use it. So if you don't open it, it'll last a long time. It comes in containers like this, freeze-dried sweet corn. It'll last about 20 years in this can if you don't open it. So then, don't buy junk that you're not going to eat, though. If you don't like corn, why would you buy this? I would never buy freeze-dried onions, for example. Right? I don't care about those. So you can, pick and choose. You can go to something like Costco, and they have these whole elaborate, 2-week supply of survival food, a 1-month supply of survival food, 1 month gluten-free supply of survival food, 1 month gluten-free vegetarian survival food, 1 month gluten-free vegan vegetarian survival food. You can get a 3-month supply for 1 person, a 3-month supply for 2 people, a 3-month supply for 4 people, a 6-month supply, 1-year supply, 2-year supply, 5-year supply. You could have a whole semi-truck load of this stuff delivered to your house. There's no limits. 30 years ago, when I was teaching prepping classes and stuff, that was not the case. Our world has changed that much. Now it's easy to get this kind of stuff, and it's not that expensive. So my thing is when I make stuff at home, there's just 2 of us. If nobody's coming over, I make extra. You can use your oven as a dryer. Dry it out in your oven, or get a dehydrator, dehydrate it, put it away. If you're not going to store it in Mylar bag, seal it in a Ziploc bag and throw it in the freezer. Okay? It's going to last. Even in the Ziploc bag, it'll last a long time if it's dried. But throwing it into the freezer makes it last even longer. Yes?
I heard you mention charcoal, because this summer, I picked some, a lot of my friends will say, oh, this is Georgia for eating something out of the field. But I got some mushrooms out of the pasture, and I looked them up on Missouri Conservation, and I wasn't the only one. There were supposed to be paracel mushrooms. Everything was right on, but I ate them. I sauteed them, ate them. My God, they were good going down. But several hours later, my stomach felt like knives in it. And no sooner than that charcoal hit my stomach, I could feel instant relief. And if I hadn't had the charcoal, I probably would have been sick for 24 hours easy.
Yeah, it's good to have, like in your first aid kit, some charcoal tablets, powdered charcoal. I'm not talking about briquettes. It's, purified charcoal powder. You have to get it from a drugstore. They have to special order it these days, and have some of that. And it is good for digestive problems. It is good for wounds. It's good for Country Life, yeah. So, it is good to have charcoal in your kit. It's great for diarrhea. If you have kids that have diarrhea, you put a spoonful of charcoal in a glass that you don't love. It will stain the glass. So in a glass that you don't love, stir it up, let the solid part settle to the bottom, and drink the water. Again, though, if you're in the wilderness, I'm not going to carry charcoal into the wilderness, because I can make charcoal in the wilderness. I can burn some wood, get the black pieces out of my fire that I have anyway, pulverize it, pour the water on it, and then drink the water. So for me, I know how to do that, so for me, there's no point in me carrying charcoal in my pack. But it's good to have it in your kit, and it's good to have it at home. And there's books written on the uses of charcoal. Get one of those books. You can get it for Kindle, probably free, and read about it and read about its uses. It's great. There is something that you should have in your kit as far as food. It's an emergency ration. And It's heavy, but it's tons of calories. A piece of this would keep you going for a long time. It's what they put in like lifeboats and airplanes in the survival kits for people to eat. These last for like 100 years, I think. They last a long time. And you put this in your kit, and then if you need it, you can take a bite of it. I have some here that I cut into little pieces, and if you want to come up and taste it, you can. It tastes not that bad. It tastes like an old stale oatmeal cookie. Oatmeal cookie. So, yeah, you can we can just pass it around if you want. You can take a piece. I think there's enough here for you. Take a piece.
Oh, there's a chocolate chip right there. Joking.
Yeah, just pass it. Let's just pass it around, and if you want a piece, you can take a piece. It's not that bad, and if I had to choose between that and eating cowslips or cattails, I would totally go for that. I do want to talk about, you can come up and look at the food, but these are like special freeze-dried meals. You just pour water in, a complete meal. These are more expensive, but having one or two of these in your bag wouldn't be a bad idea. You can get these little dried meals. They're not freeze-dried, but they're dried. Or you can put together your own dried meals. So these are MREs, meals ready to eat. This happens to be refried beans. And these are in a metal pouch. And all you have to do is tear a hole in the corner and squeeze that into your mouth. This is what our military lives on. Any ex-military here? I mean, our guys live on this stuff when they're out in the field. They live on this kind of food. Certainly we can live on it and thrive on it if we have to. So I have taken these. I've been in situations sitting on a mountain in Colorado with my family, my kids, and we all crack open our envelope and eat our lasagna, ice cold, and make a great memory. So there's no reason why we shouldn't turn some of the events of the last days into fun memories, right? I mean, we can go into this with a negative, dread, fear attitude, or we can go into this like this is going to be the best adventure of our life, right? So if we have a little knowledge, it can be a good adventure. As far as cooking food and heating it up, you need to have some kind of stove. I have several. Let me just put them up here. So for a few cents, you could buy a Sterno stove, my least favorite. Has like jelly in there. You light a match to the jelly, put your pot on it, and it's slow. It doesn't, it's better than nothing, but it doesn't really boil water very fast, a Sterno stove. But it's cheap. You can buy these at Walmart or anywhere. This stove I made out of a pop can. So you cut a pop can in half, poke holes, smush it together after you cut it in half, poke holes in it, put white gas in here, and light it, and the flames come out of here just as if it's a gas stove. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, Coleman fuel. Maybe. I don't think it would, that block doesn't burn that long, but the fuel, because the fuel goes between the two layers of the can, the fumes go up and burn, and it's pretty awesome when it works. You can YouTube and watch how they do this. Just YouTube pop can stove, and you can watch somebody make it and see how it burns. I mean, it costs nothing, right? This is a little backpacking stove. It's only that big. So it's good to have some kind of stove in your kit. It goes onto a fuel canister. It just screws onto this, and you turn on the gas and light it, and that's good to go. This is probably my favorite stove. It's called a jet boil. Everything is contained within this little box. So you have the burner unit. It screws onto the fuel canister, and then this goes on the top of it. It'll boil water in about a minute. And so since I only use boiled water for cooking, I boil the water in a minute, so only 1 minute of fuel. Pour that into the Ziploc bag, and I've only wasted 1 minute of fuel. So if my husband and I go backpacking, one of these little fuel canisters right here will last us for a week backpacking, which is pretty good. So that's called a jet boil. For sheltering at home, you should have some kind of a camp stove that, I'm not going to carry this in my backpack, but you should have some alternative, especially if you have an electric stove. What's going to happen if there's no power? You also can't cook any food. So I'll put this one right here. You can look at it. It's just a little one burner stove. It runs on butane. You can buy these at like Walmart and sporting goods stores for less than $30, one of those stoves. So good to have something like that. You can also get a wood burning stove. So this is a little wood burning stove. Just put your twigs and stuff in here, and your pot can go on the top. And if you have woods, then this is called the Silver Fire. Silver Fire. You can get it online. It's kind of expensive, but I think it's like $70 maybe for this one. But it's nice to have a wood burning option. So eventually, if you were in a long situation, you would run out of fuel. Silver Fire. I'll put it up here. Since you're a Christian church, I think you won't steal my stuff. You would be surprised how much stuff I have had stolen over the last 20 years from Christian churches. So God is watching you today, so don't walk out of here with my stuff. This is my first wood-burning stove that I bought. This is what I started camping with when I was a teenager. And it just fits together into a little tripod. It's very dirty, so I don't want to open it up. It makes like a little tripod, and you put your little wood fire inside, and then your pot sits on the top of this. It's heavy. I don't carry it backpacking because it's too heavy. And I have newer options, but I don't part with it either because it's kind of nice to have. So I'll put that up here too. So, fire, food. You need something, a pot to cook your food in if you're going to use a pot. I don't use a pot. Some kind of, in your kit, you should have some kind of cup. You should have hot drinks in your kit, tea, or if you drink coffee, or hot chocolate, hot cider. There's nothing that can warm you up faster than a hot drink if you're cold. So something that you will actually drink should be in your kit. So you can, use whatever options you like, maybe more than one option because maybe somebody that's with you can't drink or won't drink something that you have. So I usually carry like hot chocolate, tea. You can get those little packs of hot apple cider. I have coffee in my kit. I hate coffee, but I have coffee in my kit because maybe somebody's going to be in my group that needs coffee. So I have coffee in my kit also. This is a spork. A spoon and a fork and a knife all in one, very lightweight. So you can buy like packs of these, 3 or 4 of them for a few dollars. They're nice to have, lightweight. Yes?
Something to keep in mind about coffee or anything that has the caffeine in it, that works almost as well or just as well as albuterol, an inhaler for asthma. So if somebody in a group is having an asthma attack, give them some caffeine.
Awesome. That's great. I didn't know that. Wonderful. So, any questions? I know this is kind of introductory for you all. You can always call me or email me if you need some advice. I've taken people to store before. I've fitted, I don't know how many hundreds of people for backpacks, and these companies should hire me because I sell a lot of their stuff. But, don't be hard on yourself. I mean, we haven't educated people enough about these topics, I don't think. So don't beat yourself up because you don't have this or you don't have that. Just start where you're at and just start every week. Do a little something. That's all you have to do. And by this time next year, if you do a little something every week, by this time next year, you'll have surpassed me probably. So, just do the little bits that you can. Learn what you can. Get some books. One of my favorite all-time books on survival is called How to Stay Alive in the Woods. It's an old book, but you can still get it. And it has primitive skills. We are not the only ones in the world that are generating this topic today. I work part-time. My company is a worldwide company, and I go to the Netherlands periodically because I have a clinic over there. And one of my coworkers in the Netherlands, he and I are like on the same page, and he teaches classes on survival, and he goes to survival classes. And even though he lives in the Netherlands, he's been to Sweden and Norway several times because they offer like bushcraft classes over there. So all over the world, people are coming back to these simple skills that we've lost. And it's time that we all kind of come back to our roots and understand how to do these things. So this is primitive stuff like how to build a shelter, how to start a fire, how to get water out in the wild, simple kind of things like that. There's tons of books. When I first started going to the bookstores and looking at survival books, I'm not kidding you, there were 2 or 3 books. Now, if you go to Barnes and Nobles and you look at survival books, there's like a whole section of books, tons and tons of books. So get a book, go to a website, check it out, read some stuff. I gave you some websites and recommended books on your paper. Did somebody else have a question, a comment?
Going back to building a fire, when I was a young boy, I liked to take a magnifying glass on a sunny day and hit lead and start a fire. I mean, there's different ways of starting a fire. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, starting a fire, you can start a fire with a magnifying glass, and it's kind of fun, and you feel all proud of yourself after you do it. With ice? I haven't done that. Using it as a prism, the same? Nice. Yes.
One thing that I don't know if you know about or not, colloidal silver is very easy to have a little solar panel, 4 ounces, and some silver, and you can, it's a wide spectrum antibiotic, external and internal, and I would make sure to take that along as well with the little so probably works better than penicillin.
Okay.
You can make your own too. Absolutely, make your own colloidal.
I have made that before. It is a controversial remedy. Some people think that taking all that extra silver into your body is not good for you. So research it for yourself and make up your own mind. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Okay, buying a tent. First of all, do not buy your tent at Walmart. Okay? The tents at Walmart, and I probably should put up my tent, but do you have a pen? Anybody got a pen? Okay, so let me draw you a picture. So tents at Walmart, you have the tent. Can you all see this? So you have the tent, and then you have the rain fly over the tent, and the rain fly only comes part way down the tent. Okay, that's the worst tent in the world. Because how often does rain come straight down? Mostly rain comes on an angle like this. So if you buy a tent with only a partial rain fly, the rain is going to come sideways, and it's partial on every side. So no matter where you put your tent, the rain is going to come partially onto your tent, and your tent is going to be wet. You're going to wake up in the morning floating in water. So if you're going to buy a tent where the rain fly comes all the way to the ground, totally covers the whole tent. That's the most important thing. Even if it's a cheap tent with the rain fly coming all the way down, you can buy some seam sealer and seal all the seams in your tent and make it waterproof, even if it's a cheap tent. Expensive tents already have the seams sealed, so you don't have to do anything. But if you want to save money, you can buy a cheaper one, buy a tube of seam sealer, and then seal everything. The rain fly and the floor of the tent, seal it all. But this is a big deal. Don't even waste the money on this half a tent. I don't even know why they make them that way. Irritates me.
And Angie, for the starter, that dryer felt, that is very good starter.
Yes, dryer lint.
Yes.
I have some right here. A little bit of dryer lint. You hit a spark on that, it'll start a fire really good, or light a match to it. Even if you were in a situation and you reach in your pocket, and in just about any pocket, there's a little piece of fuzz down in your pocket. You take out that tiny little piece of fuzz, and you can use that for starting a fire. Yes?
I learned this the hard way going to Colorado. My oldest boy went with me. We woke up one morning, we was in a two-man tent. We woke up, the snow was waist high. So when I got down to the truck where I had my big tent, the snow completely flattened, broke the poles. That taught me a lesson. I always pitched my tent between two aspen trees, tied a nylon rope, draped it with a Walmart tarp, and I never had any more
No.
problems. Knock the condensation, insulate the tent, because the snow will build up, and it insulates it. Yeah, I learned the hard way on that one.
It is good to have a tarp, and I do have a tarp here somewhere. It's good to have a tarp. You can get really lightweight tarps, or you can get heavy tarps. But it's good to have even like one of those $5 tarps from Walmart, because you should never eat in your tent. I mean, we don't have grizzly bears here in Missouri, but we have skunks, we have raccoons, we have possums. Black bears, but not grizzly bears. So I'm not afraid of a black bear, but I have a healthy respect for grizzly bears. I have come face to face with grizzly bears in my hiking before, and it's scary to look a grizzly bear in the eye, even though you're not supposed to. I did it. I got out this bad boy right here. This is pepper spray for a grizzly bear, and we were hiking, and our tent was like over by that door, and the grizzly bear and her cub were between us and our tent. When she saw us, she stood up on her hind legs. She peed, not a good sign. She rubbed her back on a tree, snorted, and there was nothing that we could do except pull out our pepper spray. And we just stood there kind of frozen. And she took her cub and she kind of went into the woods. We were in a dense woods just on a single path. And we thought she left, but we still just stood there because we didn't really want to move. And all of a sudden she had circled around and she was like standing right where Rhonda is, right there. And her baby was by her. And we just froze. And one of the guys with us said, "Take her picture." I'm like, "You were crazy. I'm not taking her picture." Anyway, we just started backing up, and she took her baby and she crossed in front of us. I mean, you can't outrun a grizzly bear. You can't do anything. I mean, we were her lunch. So she went across, and we were so thankful, and we had to go sleep in our tent that night. It was in the Tetons. If you backpack up in the Tetons, you're almost guaranteed to see grizzly bear. The woods up in the top of the Tetons is full of grizzly bears. So this pepper spray could save you from a grizzly bear. It's red pepper spray. You spray them right in the face. Or it could not save you. Some grizzly bears are like Mexicans and they love hot food, I guess, because it's just a seasoning for their lunch. So, yes, they can climb a tree. Grizzly bears can climb trees. So, the best thing for you to do is have a gun and shoot your partner in the leg and run really fast. I'll tell you what, pepper spray really does work because I have had and have these little personal pepper sprays. And I had one when I worked kind of in the ghetto of Kansas City doing Bible work and mission work. And I carried it with me. And then I was going to give it to my daughter because she was going off to California. So I thought, you need a pepper spray. Here, take mine. But I didn't want to give it to her because I had it for a while and I wasn't sure it worked. So I took it outside. It was a perfectly calm day. I sprayed it right down at the ground on this perfectly calm day, and it was like this bad cartoon. This red stream came out, instead of going into the ground, like all of a sudden this gust of wind came up, and it swirled up in the air, just like one of those cartoons. And it swirled up, and it came right into my face and hit me right in the face. I got a full shot of pepper spray in the face. I'm telling you, that stuff works. Really, like I screamed. I ran into the house screaming my head off. I ran into the bathroom, started putting cold water on my face. My husband and my son were home. They run into the bathroom. What happened? What happened? I'm like, I sprayed myself with pepper spray. And they both stood there like, well, that was stupid. And they started laughing and everything. I'm like, it's not funny. And I lifted my face up, and my eyeballs were like beet red. It went up my nose and into my mouth. I was just like fried everywhere. My skin was all burned. It was terrible. It really took like more than 24 hours for the burning sensation to go away. So, ladies, carry that pepper spray with you. Could save your life, but be careful if you test it. I have family members that live in grizzly country, and this has saved their lives before when a grizzly bear attacked them. So I do carry it with me when I go into grizzly country. It's good to have. It certainly would protect me from a person. I mean, it's a good, like, nonviolent way to protect yourself. And I have gotten it out before when I felt threatened by men in the woods. I've gotten it out. Yeah, so we do have people today, and this brings up another topic. We have people today that are losing their minds. Right? They're people that are strung out on drugs and stuff, and they are losing their minds. And we should be prepared to protect ourselves and our family in some fashion from people that are totally lost their mind. And so whatever that fashion is, whatever you choose to do, Jesus did say to his followers, sell what you have and buy a sword. That's what Jesus said. You check it out. So what did that mean? I have figured it out what it means for me. You need to figure it out what it means to you. If a crazed person came into this church and started shooting people, what do you think you would do? What would you do? Would somebody step up and try to stop him? I mean, you need to think this through. What did Jesus mean when he said, sell what you have and buy a sword, especially in the context of crises? So, follow that through. Think it through. Does that mean you should buy a gun? Should you buy a knife? Should you have pepper spray, taser? What? Would you sit by and let your daughter be maimed? We need to think that kind of stuff through because more and more that kind of stuff is happening. Think of that person that just was shot holding their baby in their arms inside of their house. People are going crazy. So we need to think about surviving. And I'm not saying that we turn into murderers, but we should have a way of protecting ourselves. So, any other thoughts or questions?
She's right. They do climb trees. 'Cause I watched a video on YouTube where that guy was in his deer stand way up the tree. And he said by the time he could
Yeah, they do. Anything else? Has this been helpful? Are you motivated? Are you going to get a bug out bag so you can grab it and go? Awesome.
Yep, I can get you some more of those. I just want to say thank you, Angie. Thank you so much for coming. I was exposed to her material a couple of times since I've known her and went to women's ministry things, and I just want to say I appreciate you coming to our church. This subject isn't really a subject that I ever like thinking about personally, you know. And when she had the scripture that pointed out when you flee, you know, and those types of things aren't really things that I like to think about. I don't want to think about fleeing. I don't want to think about really having a bug out bag. But I do have to recognize that this is what Scripture says. And we are in the last days. And I just hope that each and every one of us here really does take this serious, because we always want to think that we are going to be protected. And I always want to think I'm going to have my home and my van and plenty of money to put gas in it and plenty of food for me or my family. But you know, the truth of the matter is that it just may be all of us that are going to have to flee. We don't know, because we see everything coming. Like she says, we are a generation that really doesn't know how to take care of ourselves well. Our children don't. Cal?
Well, if you just look at non-Christians, they're into this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very obvious something big is coming and it's going to happen, even to non-Christians. And we've got an advantage with the prophecies that we have.
Amen.
And Ellen
We
White
do.
told us a lot of things to do. And if we don't do those things, then shame on us.
Amen.
Because if we're not going to prepare, then we're going to have to face whatever happens. And it's not going to be as easy.
That's true.
And that is the thing. It's like you don't have to prepare anything. It doesn't mean you're going to be lost. But I just believe it will be harder if you don't prepare. It doesn't mean you're going to be lost if you don't prepare. It's just going to be more challenging and more difficult for you if you don't prepare. And it's going to be more difficult for those people that are prepared if you don't prepare. Right? So I owe responsibility to you to be prepared. And you owe responsibility to me to be prepared. Because if one of us is not prepared, the other one of us have to take care of the other one. Because that's the Christian thing to do. So we owe it to each other.
Amen. Jesse, did you have a comment?
I was going to say is that all of us have heard it before. The Spirit of Prophecy comments are very clear and instructive. Get out of the cities, leave the big cities. If you can, find a small acreage in the country, establish means of support. That's what she's saying. She's talking about sheltering at home. And, you know, the rest of it just follows suit. So we've been told for a long time, the church has been told for a long time, be doing these things.
You know, what's funny, though, is that every time my family gets moved, I always have to rely on God to place me and my family where He's going to place us. And I have to tell you, He hasn't always placed me in the country. You know, I rely on God for my next home, and I'm not always in the country, and I'm not really so much in the country now. I'm in a neighborhood as well. And it's the same with Angie and her family. God doesn't always place us pastoral families in the country. And I often wonder about that, how she writes that. So it just made me realize more. Maybe I need to be a little bit more prepared in case of a disaster or in case of something happening. And I want to be able to be prepared enough to help people. And
Just like she
so,
was saying, that you have church brothers and sisters who are in the country.
right.
The church can help each other and others.
Amen.
Just like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Amen. So I want to thank you for coming. So does anybody else have any more questions, or yes?
You can make your own stomach stove. Get one of those cans of chicken, they're about this thick. Get a piece of regular, wick or string. Put it in there and put no wax in there. A hobo taught my son that, and he cooked
Nice.
That is, yeah,
Well, I'm not an alarmist, but you said if it happens, it's not if.
right. I know, I'm always teetering back and forth with that, right? And this is why I invited Angie, because it is. Always in my mind, I'm always having a hard time stepping forward and realizing, right, when it happens. When it happens, because I live a pretty comfortable life, like a lot of people here do, and God's really impressing me though, that, it's a more serious than I recognize, and I need to be more prepared. And so I thought if I had to be prepared, I thought my church family ought to be prepared.
Remember, at the time of the crisis, it's too late to prepare.
Amen.
Now is the time to
Amen.
prepare.
Bob?
Go for it.
I've been harping on this subject for 2 years minimum and have gotten nowhere. But when stuff hits, if I'm not ready, I'm heading to Mike and Jenny. And on local radio, KZRG, if you order 4-day, 5-day supply of MREs, because the country's on this big MRE kick, they'll give you 4 weeks extra for free.
Okay.
Where's that at?
KZRG radio.
Cal and then Mario.
She said the wick for that can of chicken with the, empty can of chicken. Sternum chicken. Sternum chicken. Anyway, she said the wick is, use a piece of fan belt with the wax. Was it wax? Candle wax. Candle wax. And fan belts. So save your old fan belts, Mike.
Because I'm black smoke and then you're sick.
Well, if you survive that, you'll be able to.
We can YouTube that.
You can buy a real wick.
That's true.
You can buy a real wick.
We sure can. Okay, Mario.
Well, that's really the reason. One reason that we are moved from LA, big city, to here, Missouri. We are advised, Christian, to be in a country, kind of. We can do that, and then learn to live a simple living. So that's why I live in the country. But now I moved because of the situation here in the city, but still very important. This is a very good eye-opener to me because I believe that the big thing, like the Bible says that just like in the final days, we will be kind of, everything will be kind of just like Elijah when he went, So I'm more on that like prepared first spiritually, and then not so big thing in all this food, because I know a person when we were in LA that he has really kind of in a big he think he has to make a bunker and all this years of food, and it could be like the other dish too, because we're just preparing physically more on, but I think more is spiritually. But I think this is really neat that be in the middle and have a small, just.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for Angie to come.
Yeah, I am too.
If you want to come up after we have prayer and look at anything or whatever, welcome to look. You can look and touch.